The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that follows years of secrets tightly coiled and hidden beneath the surface of a family unraveling in front of millions. But silence doesn't last forever. In a shocking twist no one saw coming, the infamous $80,000 nanny scandal, the same scandal that fractured trust and ignited public outrage, has returned. But this time, it's carrying something far more explosive than before. A twist buried so deep, even Robyn didn't see it coming. And it all began when a single envelope slid across a polished legal desk in Flagstaff, Arizona. No return address, no markings, just a quiet package that reopened a wound the Browns thought they'd buried years ago. Inside, bank records, handwritten notes, a contract with a non-disclosure clause now voided by the very court that once sealed it. And at the bottom of it all, one line scribbled in a familiar hand: "They paid her more than you'll ever know." The scandal wasn't over. In fact, it never really ended, because what no one realized, not even Kody and his ever-dramatic declarations, was that the $80,000 salary was just the opening act. The real betrayal was still hiding, just waiting for the right moment to rise. Now, in a courtroom buzzing with tension and guarded by security detail, the judge leaned forward and uttered 6 words that would shake the Sister Wives universe. "This wasn't about childcare, was it?" And just like that, the gallery erupted. But before the courtroom could catch its breath, a woman stood up in the back, someone no one had seen in years, and everything changed. As murmurs rippled through the courtroom, all eyes turned to the woman standing silently at the back, her face partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, her posture rigid, unreadable. At first no one recognized her, but then Christine's eyes widened. Janelle leaned forward. Even Mary, usually stone-faced, let her jaw fall open slightly, because standing in that courtroom, after nearly a decade of complete silence, was the original Nanny. Her name was Lydia Harper, a name buried beneath layers of NDAs, hidden paychecks, and years of production edits. But for those who had lived the reality behind the TLC curtain, her presence was like a ghost walking into the light. This wasn't the same young woman who once cared for Robyn's children while the rest of the Brown family wondered why they suddenly weren't welcome in each other's home. Lydia looked tired, older, worn down, but in her hand was a single document, folded, yellowed, and visibly creased with time. The judge motioned to security, but Christine stood up. "She's not here to cause trouble," Christine said, voice clear, unwavering. "She's here because we all deserve the truth." Lydia approached the witness stand. The gallery held its collective breath. Under oath, her voice trembled only slightly. "I never wanted to come back," she began. "But when I saw the news, when I saw what Robyn said last month about me being family, I knew I had to, because that's not the truth." She opened the document in her hands, the original employment agreement, not the sanitized one filed in court, the real one. And as she handed it to the judge, the courtroom saw it clearly. Base salary, $80,000. Additional allowance, $30,000 for non-childcare duties. Total compensation, $110,000 annually. A shocked gasp echoed from the audience. Even Robyn's lawyer turned pale. And that's when Lydia said it. "I wasn't just a nanny, I was a decoy." What Lydia revealed next made even the judge visibly recoil, because if what she said was true, the entire foundation of Robyn and Kody's defense was about to crumble, and take the family's legal strategy with it. "I wasn't just a nanny, I was a decoy." The words landed like a thunderclap in the courtroom. Even the clicking of pens stopped. The judge sat back slowly, eyes narrowing, as if replaying every episode, every affidavit, every denied accusation through a new lens. Kody Brown, slouched in his chair with arms crossed, scoffed aloud, a mixture of contempt and nerves he couldn't hide. Robyn, on the other hand, looked frozen, pale, as if she already knew what Lydia was about to say, but had hoped this moment would never come. Lydia, voice steady now, stared straight ahead. She didn't blink. "My job was never just about watching the kids. It wasn't about education. or meals, or even being a second pair of hands. That was the cover story. What I was really there to do was protect Robyn from the rest of the family. A murmur swept through the gallery. Christine closed her eyes slowly. Janelle clenched her jaw. The courtroom bailiff stood a little straighter, sensing the emotional temperature was rising fast. Lydia continued, I was instructed by Robyn to report back any time another wife tried to visit the house. I was told to never let Christine in without an appointment. I was given a list of people Kody didn't want near the property, and was told to take the kids to the park if Mary showed up unannounced. She paused, breathing in deeply. I signed an NDA, I took the money, I lived with the shame, but I can't stay quiet anymore, because it wasn't just isolation, it was manipulation. And that extra $30,000, that wasn't for childcare, that was for loyalty. The judge, who had been silent until now, leaned forward and tapped his pen. Are you stating on the record that you were paid additional income to spy on the Brown family? Why? Lydia didn't flinch. Yes. Gasps echoed through the room. Even the court reporter looked stunned. Do you have proof? The judge asked, steely and sharp. Lydia nodded, and motioned to her bag. Out came a slim black leather-bound planner, embossed with the year inside, handwritten logs of every encounter, instructions written in Robyn's handwriting, emails printed from a burner address, for Nanny eyes only, at outlook.com, payment receipts labeled childcare enhancement package. It was meticulous, painfully detailed, and damning. Christine rose to her feet. Your Honor, this changes everything. But before the judge could respond, Kody snapped, you're all falling for it. This is a betrayal. She's lying. The judge slammed his gavel. Mr. Brown, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt. The gallery erupted. Lydia stood quietly amidst the chaos, tears welling, but not falling. She'd carried this truth for years, and finally it was no longer hers to carry alone. When the courtroom finally settled, murmurs replaced by tension so thick you could slice it, the judge took a slow breath and adjusted his glasses. Ms. Harper, he said, you've given us an account that would alarm any reasonable observer, but it's your supporting documents that now raise legal concerns. The court will take this evidence seriously. But even Lydia hadn't expected what came next, because sitting at the back of the courtroom, with a black leather briefcase and a reputation for forensic precision, was Douglas McCarty, a court-appointed financial auditor. He had been brought in weeks prior, quietly to investigate alleged misuse of joint family funds tied to the now infamous Coyote Pass dealings. But what McCarty uncovered in his quiet number-driven world went beyond land, beyond mortgages, beyond simple mismanagement. He found a shadow account. Your Honor, he said as he took the stand. Upon reviewing the bank transfers, line item expenditure, and anonymized vendor payments connected to the Brown Family LLC, particularly accounts held in Robyn Brown's name and associated trusts, we located a recurring payment structure tied to what was labeled as nanny services. He held up a chart, projected onto the courtroom screen, $6,500 per month, labeled as caregiving supplement, $2,000 per quarter, as confidentiality retainers, and a one-time $20,000 payment, dated just days after the public backlash to the initial nanny controversy. But these weren't payments to Lydia Harper, McCarty continued. They were payments to a shell company based in Nevada, registered under an alias linked to Robyn's former business partner. The courtroom buzzed. Even Kody blinked hard, his mouth slightly agape. This wasn't the script he had prepared for. This wasn't the just a nanny defense he'd paraded in front of cameras for years. Christine leaned toward her lawyer. She moved the money, she hid it, she buried it under a fake company. Janelle whispered, they thought they could outsmart the and it gets worse, McCarty said, tapping his folder. That Nevada account, it was used to finance personal expenses, private travel, designer purchases, and a luxury storage facility in Scottsdale, under surveillance by this court as of 2 weeks ago. The screen flicked to a photo, a high-end vault, rented monthly, tied to an account under RR Holdings LLC. Next to it, a time-stamped image of Robyn entering the unit, holding a fireproof lockbox. Gasps. Again, what exactly is inside that box, Your Honor? We don't yet know, McCarty said, but this court has every reason to believe it contains records, possibly assets concealed from family business disclosures, and marital property filings. Robyn's face was red, Kody was visibly sweating, and Lydia, she sat quietly, finally understanding that her truth was just the first crack in a dam long ready to burst. The next court session would issue a warrant to open the vault, but what they found inside wasn't just shocking, it rewrote the financial history of the Brown family. The courtroom reconvened 2 days later, but this wasn't just a continuation of a trial, this was a reckoning. Everyone knew that whatever was inside that luxury Scottsdale vault could make or break the case, or more accurately, it could bury Kody and Robyn's defense for good. A warrant had been issued, the vault had been opened under strict supervision, and now a single box, steel reinforced, scratched from age and travel, with 2 rusted latches, sat center stage guarded by a bailiff and a financial investigator. Christine, Janelle and Mary leaned forward. Robyn, she stared at her lap, face pale, expression unreadable. Kody didn't even look at the box, he looked only at the door, like a man hoping for an escape that would never come. The court clerk opened the box with gloved hands. What emerged wasn't piles of cash, it wasn't jewelry or passports, it was worse. Dozens of original documents, some handwritten, others printed on company letterhead, a few laminated, all damning, each one tied to misrepresented family business expenses, diverted payments, or shell companies created in the names of trust figures, including shockingly 2 of Kody's sons. The judge called for silence as the documents were a consulting services invoice from 2018 billed at $15,000 a month to a company never registered with the I. A document marked private from Robyn addressed to Kody outlining a proposal to segregate family resources into 2 protected entities, one for legal exposure, one for lifestyle continuity. A handwritten ledger detailing payouts over the course of 4 years to someone only referred to as the handler. The amount $2,000. The courtroom went silent. The handler? Christine turned to Janelle and whispered, "That's what Robyn used to call Lydia," but Lydia didn't know it. Lydia from the gallery buried her face in her hands. The judge cleared his throat. This is not only a violation of ethical family business practices, it may rise to the level of fraudulent concealment. Kody erupted again. "No, these weren't meant to be public. That's private family business. You don't understand how we operate." But the judge wasn't interested in excuses. He held up a final document, one that had been buried at the bottom of the lockbox, a confidential memo signed by Robyn. The content, a clause recommending that all staff including household workers, nannies, tutors and even yard maintenance, sign an agreement to not speak to or acknowledge any of the wives unless cleared by Kody or Robyn and This document, the judge said, effectively attempted to legally isolate the original wives from their own home environment. The room exploded in gasps. Christine shook her head stunned. Mary looked away. Janelle's eyes filled with tears. Everything they suspected was not just true. It was documented. It was archived. It was weaponized. But the most shocking revelation wasn't in a document. It was in a photo, tucked into the back of the lockbox, featuring someone the family thought they'd never see again. Tucked deep into the bottom corner of the fireproof lockbox, behind financial records and forged contracts, the court clerk pulled out what appeared to be an old manila envelope. It was sealed with a fragile strip of tape, yellowing at the edges, forgotten, maybe on purpose. But what was inside was not just evidence. It was the moment the courtroom lost its collective breath. A photograph, one 5x7, full color printed at a high-end photo lab. It wasn't what anyone expected. In the photo, Robyn sitting at a dining table with a woman whose face had not been seen publicly in years, Cheryl, Robyn's long estranged cousin. But more shocking than her presence was the other person in the shot, Lydia Harper, the nanny, but not in uniform, not carrying toys, not standing discreetly behind the kids. No, she was at the table, next to Cheryl, holding a pen, pointing at what looked like a property map. "What is this?" the judge asked. McCarty, the auditor, took the photo under magnification. "It appears to be a draft layout of the Coyote Pass development project." the version filed before the wives were made aware of Kody's revised lot plan. Christine looked as if the air had been punched from her chest. That photo wasn't just a glimpse behind the curtain, it was a timestamp proving what many had feared. Robyn and Kody had been planning the takeover of Coyote Pass with Lydia as an insider long before the family meetings were ever filmed. Janelle's attorney Your Honor, this photo implies conspiracy to conceal property discussions from shared legal stakeholders. Robyn began to sob, but this time, the courtroom did not offer sympathy, because when paired with Lydia's testimony, the hidden financial trail and now photographic proof, a clear pattern was forming. Nanny services were a cover, communication was intentionally restricted, business was conducted in the shadows, and documented with careless arrogance. Then Christine asked the question everyone had been afraid to voice. If Lydia was helping plan Coyote Pass with Robyn, then what else did they plan together? The judge ordered a 10-minute recess, and in the hallway, Christine whispered to her attorney, check the trust document, check the medical expenses, check everything, because if they were willing to use Lydia, they might have been willing to use anyone. The next piece of evidence wasn't a photo or a receipt, it was a recorded phone call, one that had been anonymously delivered to the courthouse the night before, and on that recording, a voice many thought would never turn on Kody and Robyn. As court resumed, no one was prepared for what came next. The judge cleared his throat and looked up, his face unreadable. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, we have received an anonymous audio submission, accompanied by a signed and verified affidavit. This court has reviewed its authenticity. The contents are relevant. He nodded to the courtroom technician, who dimmed the lights and played the audio from a speaker beneath the judge's bench. The voice came through crackly at first, then unmistakable. You can't keep doing this, Robyn. This isn't just about childcare or money anymore. You're isolating, you're turning him against everyone. The courtroom froze. It was Dayton, Robyn's own son. He sounded older than most had last heard him, not the shy teen seen briefly in earlier episodes. He was calm, controlled, but his words hit like a gavel. You lied to the family. You told them Lydia was just helping with Solomon and Ari, but you had her watching the security cameras too. You had her logging who came and went from Janelle's lot. That's not what a nanny does. Gasps filled the room. Christine closed her eyes. Mary gripped the bench in front of her. I'm not going to be part of this anymore, Dayton continued. I've kept quiet for too long, but I saw the documents you and Kody kept in the locked desk. I know what was paid. I know Lydia wasn't the only one. The tape cut out. Silence returned to the courtroom, but the silence was deafening. Robyn was pale. Her hands trembled. Kody sat completely still, like a statue carved in disbelief. He hadn't known this was coming. That was clear. Your Honor, Janelle's lawyer said, stand. We request immediate forensic access to the Home Office Dayton references in this recording. There is every reason to believe additional concealment of evidence is underway. The judge agreed without hesitation. Motion granted. Officers are en route now. Christine leaned in to whisper, but her voice shook. He tried to do the right thing. Lydia began to cry softly in the back row. This was no longer just about hidden money or broken trust. This was now about a son breaking free from the manipulation of his mother and stepfather, to tell the truth, and it had changed everything. But the bombshell wasn't over, because when officers opened that locked desk, they didn't just find documents, they found a wire transfer, and it was traced to a name none of the wives had ever heard before. The deputies moved quickly, escorted by financial investigators and court-appointed observers. Within 2 hours, they returned with the contents of the locked office cabinet at Robyn and Kody's home, a dark mahogany desk, sealed in the rear compartment of the master suite. Inside, they found exactly what the tape had suggested: a stack of folders marked personal do not copy, 2 flash drives, and 1 white envelope. It was the envelope that brought the courtroom to a halt. It contained a wire transfer slip, dated just 6 months before the scandal broke, for a stunning amount of $8. The origin, one of the nanny accounts holding funds. The recipient, Bryson Everhart. The courtroom whispered. Christine looked puzzled. Who is that? The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, this name does not appear in any past or current filings related to the Brown Family Trust, business vendors or the show's production network. We ran the name through cross-reference systems. Bryson Everhart is a shell alien, and it is connected to a newly created LLC in Arizona, one registered to a P.O. box, with Robyn's signature listed as office administrator. The judge raised his eyebrow. A shell company? Yes, Your Honor. The wire was sent to an account used to pay for multiple services, including luxury security detail, rental of a second home in Flagstaff, and most notably a private consulting firm for reputation management. Robyn tried to interject, but her voice caught in her throat. She had paid someone to scrub her and Kody's financial trail from the internet, from records, and even from internal family accounts. Janelle whispered, "That explains the missing money." Mary was stunned. They were using a fake person to clean their mess. The prosecution dropped another bombshell. Not only had the account received funds from the Nanny salary pool, but it had been replenished regularly by reallocating maintenance costs for Coyote Pass, costs Kody had told the wives were higher due to inflation and land permit fees. It wasn't inflation, it was infiltration. Every month, a portion of money they all believed was going to taxes, fences, or home repairs was funneled into Bryson Everhart's company, a ghost entity created by Robyn and Kody. But why? The answer came from one of the flash drives found in the drawer. On it, a series of emails, some drafted, some sent, between Kody, Robyn, and an executive from a reality media law firm specializing in narrative control and public image. "It is our recommendation that all current and former cast members be monitored for statements," one email read, "and that emotional leverage be applied where possible to disincentivize defection." The courtroom fell silent again. Christine sat completely still. Janelle muttered under her breath, "They weaponized everything, even our pain." But just when it seemed the scandal had reached its peak, a final sealed document was introduced, one signed by Robyn herself, and it contained a list of every wife she wanted removed from the family. When the sealed envelope was opened, no one in the courtroom expected what lay inside. It wasn't a contract, not a receipt, not a legal filing. It was a handwritten memo, dated and initialed by Robyn Brown, a personal document titled Family Sustainability and Brand Integrity Review, draft only. Inside were 4 names, each written in pen, each with circled annotations next to them. The judge held the document up, then read aloud, "Christine emotionally unstable, risk of defection. Janelle resistant to narrative framing, unreliable. Mary brand liability, history of controversy." And the 4th name, Isabel vulnerability concerns, exposure risk due to medical history. Gasps rippled through the room. Christine's mouth dropped open. She listed our daughter. Robyn buried her face in her hands. Christine stood up shaking. "She called my child a liability." The judge called for immediate order, pounding his gavel, but the moment couldn't be undone. "This," the prosecutor said, "is not only cold, it is calculated." The wording demonstrates an intent to manipulate, control, and ultimately expel every woman in this family who posed a threat to Robyn and Kody's consolidation of power. It was clear now, the Nanny scandal wasn't just about finances. It was part of a broader purge, a campaign to isolate, silence, and eliminate opposition, all while controlling the family image for profit. What made it worse? The memo had been scheduled to be presented to a media consultant in an upcoming private retreat, one paid for with funds marked as nanny training reimbursement. Mary sat back in her seat, stunned. I stayed thinking I still had a place." Janelle turned to her lawyer. "How can this not be premeditated fraud?" "It is," he whispered, "and it's also moral bankruptcy." Christine's eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. She stood stronger than ever before. "They were trying to erase us." And just like that, the room shifted. This was no longer about hidden salaries or embezzled funds. This was about a deliberate betrayal of every woman who built the Brown family, and a systematic plan to rewrite the legacy in Robyn and Kody's image. But there was one final moment no one saw coming, a courtroom confrontation so explosive that the judge was forced to clear the gallery and issue a direct warning to Kody himself. The courtroom was a powder keg. The memo had detonated the room's final nerve, but the explosion was still to come. Kody Brown, who had remained seated for most of the proceedings, stood up without permission. His fists were clenched, his face red, his voice thundered through the courtroom. That memo was never meant to be seen. You think you know what it takes to keep this family alive? You think Christine or Janelle ever wanted the hard choices? I had to protect what was left. The judge banged the gavel. Mr. Brown, you are out of order. But Kody didn't sit down. They turned their backs, all of them. I gave everything to these women and they spit on it. You want to talk betrayal? Let's talk about loyalty. Let's talk about how nobody stood by me. Christine rose calmly, her voice like ice. We didn't leave you, Kody. You pushed us out. Janelle echoed her. You made the choice to choose one wife, one path. And that wasn't family. That was control. Robyn sat trembling, silent. Then the voice that truly silenced the room came from the gallery. Mary, for the first time in days she stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry, but her words had weight. You used our faith as a lead. You made us believe that your pain was always bigger than ours. You made me believe I was unworthy unless I was invisible. I stayed too long. We all did. The gallery erupted. Supporters, family members, and even a few jurors gasped. Some clapped, some cried. The judge slammed the gavel again. This gallery will be cleared. Now, marshals ushered people out. Cameras were covered. Lawyers stood stunned. But one moment remained. As Christine was led out of the room, she turned to Kody and spoke just 6 words. You lied to save your ego. And Kody, furious, wounded, humiliated, could only watch as every woman who once called him their husband walked out of that courtroom with their heads high, their truth spoken, and the power finally returned to them. Robyn never spoke another word, and as the courtroom doors closed behind the Browns, the only sound left echoing through the chamber was the soft click of justice finally locking into place. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Christine, standing beside Janelle and Mary, addressed them. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth, about holding someone accountable who used love as currency and loyalty as control. She looked into the cameras, her voice steady. We were silenced for too long, but not anymore. And to every woman watching this, know that you don't need permission to walk away from what breaks you.